Dr. Rebecca Deen, Chair of the UT Arlington Political Science Department. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. So, as you know, two Republicans advanced to the runoff in the 6th Congressional District. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, of course, you had such a wide field with 23 candidates. And so I think what happened with the Democrats is that their support really got split up among some well-qualified candidates. Um, if you look at the sort of compilation of all the Democrats, they got roughly what Ms. Sanchez had in 2018 when she ran. And she did well in Tarrant County, but other Democrats like Sean Lasseter and Lydia Bean, to a certain extent, were able to pull some of those numbers away from her. Perhaps voters that, had this been a true primary, she might have been able to be successful.
Let me ask you about that because, when I looked at the race, I added up all the votes that the Republican candidates had, and yes, they had 11, and the 10 that the Democrats had, the 10 candidates, they're about, the Republicans had 4,200 plus more than the Democrats. And like you had mentioned, Janelyn Sanchez and the general won in 2018 in Tarrant County. And then in 2020, Stephen Daniel in Tarrant County beat Congressman Wright. So did the Democrats underperform here?
Or perhaps the Republicans overperformed in Ellis and Navarro County. I think that, well, there's a couple different things, right? First of all, it was a special election. So you really had to motivate your voters to turn out, which is always going to be problematic. And I think that because the Republicans lost the presidential election and they're very much looking forward to winning back the House if they can in the midterm, their voters are already thinking ahead. Their voters are thinking about, okay, well, we don't have control at the federal level. What can we do? And this is the first opportunity that they had to voice their frustration.
And I know that this still by and large is a Republican district because of Ellis and Navarro counties, but Tarrant County, usually the Democrats do better. And here the Republicans did better. So you think that's basically a reflection on trying to win back the House in 22?
I do. I think it's a reflection of where the energy was in this particular cycle. It was among the Republicans. And, it's also possible that sort of the, intra-party infighting that we might typically think is a bad thing for the party might actually have increased the salience of this election to those Republican voters and gotten them out to the polls.
And let me ask you about that because it seems as if State Representative Elsie is going to have a tough fight on his hands in the sense of, Susan Wright won far more votes in Tarrant County, which is her stronghold, and won more votes in Navarro County, and his margin over her in his stronghold was less than 1,000 votes. Plus, she also has the backing of former President Trump, while he does have the backing of former Texas Governor Rick Perry. So talk to me about his challenges.
I think that's right. I think he's going to have to mobilize his voters, and he's also going to have to present a viable alternative, like why he is a good choice. So I think here he's probably going to want to talk about his experience legislating, his experience as someone who can get things accomplished. I would look for him to maybe point to some of his experiences in Austin and bringing Texas to Washington, that sort of rhetoric. I would think he would want to lean into that. I think, as you say, the challenge is going to be the role of former President Trump in this. And then also, the unfortunate robocalls that Mrs. Wright was subject to. I think also, again, it increased salience in the election, it increased people talking about the election, and it associated her with former President Trump, for whom these voters, that's really motivating.
And just on the subject of those robocalls, they were trying to hurt her, obviously. Do you think they may have backfired?
Yes, I do. I do. There was just such widespread condemnation on them, and they were just ugly. And so I think that whoever was behind this didn't get the outcome that they had wanted.
And my last question to you, and you talked a little bit about it. I mean, do you think that this is going to be more like a Republican primary, or, I mean, I asked both Elsie and Wright about, do they try to, talk to Democrats, talk to independents about their campaign? And they said, obviously they would welcome all the support, but that their message doesn't change. What do you make about that? Because now Democrats and perhaps independents, some of them, may feel as if they don't have a candidate in this race.
Well, I think that's right. I think it's, you know, it, Representative Elsie might be able to pull in some of the independent voters, but former President Trump is a pretty polarizing figure. And so just as he's a motivator for some of the Republican voters, he's an anti-motivator. I guess he's a reason why someone wouldn't vote for Mrs. Wright in the runoff. And then, of course, it's a runoff. So you have to really be invested in the outcome of this particular election to go and vote.
Yeah, it's a challenge for these candidates to get their supporters to the polls.
It is. Then it really speaks to the fact that the people who are going to vote in this particular election are the ones who feel very strongly about their particular candidate. So that even reinforces the idea that these are probably going to be certainly the strongest Republican partisans, and then the independents who might lean Republican.
Dr. Rebecca Deen, Chair of the UT Arlington Political Science Department, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.